everybody? It's Sir Mill. Trucking with Sir Mill. So on today's video, I'm gonna talk about the agriculture exemption and how it affects my job, at least, hauling raw milk. We're gonna talk about it on the rule, how it works, and how my company uses it the correct way. But as you already know, before we get too deep in this thing, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to come join the family. Let's go. Alright, I'm back, y'all. So, agriculture exemption. What is it? Let me bump this idle up so you ain't hearing that vibration. Man, it's a beautiful morning, ain't it? I'm up here in Wisconsin, man. Look at the sun coming up. The weather's starting to break. The snow getting up. We can see some grass. The snow's starting to melt, man. I ain't never been so ready for spring in my life. But, so we're going to read the agriculture exemption from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Association website. I'm going to put a link in the description where you can go look it up yourself, but I'm going to read it from their website. It says, below is a list of hours of service and agriculture exemptions. 49 CFR 395.1K provides exceptions from the hours of service rules during planting and harvesting periods as determined by the state for the transportation of agricultural commodities, including livestock, bees, horses, fish used for food, and other commodities that meet the definition of agricultural commodity under 395.2 within a 150 air mile radius from the source of the commodities. The exemption also applies to the transport of farm supplies for agricultural purposes shipped from either a wholesale or retail distribution point to the location the supplies will be used, or from a wholesale distribution point to a retailer. That really don't apply to me because I ain't hauling that type of stuff. So let's keep going. Hours of service regulations do not apply to the transportation of agricultural commodities operating completely within the 150 air mile radius by for-hire or private carriers. Therefore, work and driving hours are not limited, and the driver is also not required to use an electronic logging device, ELD, or keep paper logs. In an operation where a driver uses a vehicle equipped with an ELD, a driver that is exempt can use an exempt driver account or annotate the time as exempt ag operation. So basically, 150 miles from the source, which is 172 driving miles, of a raw commodity. We're going to talk about the raw part. It has to be a raw, unprocessed, unfinished commodity. No cream, no soy milk, that type of stuff has been processed of the source. If you have a multiple stop raw load, you can only do it from the first stop. 150 air miles from the first stop. That's how you determine your air bubble. We're going to talk about it though. I'm going to keep reading the rule. Once a driver operates beyond the 150 air mile radius, the hours of service regulations apply. Therefore, starting at the time and location where the transporter goes past the 150 air mile radius, the driver must maintain logs using an EOD unless the driver or the vehicle meets one of the limited EOD exemptions. The driver must work and drive within the limitations of the hours of service rules when operating beyond the 150 air mile radius. Time spent working within the 150 air mile radius does not count towards the driver's daily and weekly limits. So you driving at 150 air miles, you don't have to log it, you don't have to run a paper or EOD. Once you get outside that 150, you become, hours of service are in effect from that point forward. Nothing in that circle gets logged under that ag exemption. Now, it's up to your company if they want to use it. I'm not telling you to use it, I'm just explaining it. My company chooses to use it. You would have to check with that specific tanker company that's hauling that raw commodity, and if that load qualifies, or if they even use it at all. Some don't want to use it. It's there to use, but it's up to the company. You have to get their permission. My company uses it. Okay. When operating within the 150 air mile radius, the driver can either identify the movement of the commercial motor vehicle as authorized personal use on the EOD, or refrain from logging into the EOD. I don't log into the EOD while we're within the 150. Once I hit the 150 air mile bubble, the edge of that, and I'm going to start logging, I annotate my log like it said. I put exempt driver agriculture exemption. That lets that officer know I was within the air miles. He can match my bills up to the air miles and get an app or whatever and look at it and say, okay, he was exempt during this time, so that logging period don't count. If the driver logs into the EOD and identifies the movement as authorized personal use, the driver must also make an annotation on the EOD explaining that the movement is exempt per the agriculture exemption. Upon exiting the 150 air mile radius, the driver must then identify the movement of the vehicle as on-duty driving. That's the annotation for the exempt. If the driver does not log into the EOD while operating within the 150 air mile radius, then upon exiting the 150 air mile radius, the driver must then log into the EOD, identifying the movement as on-duty driving, and make an annotation on the EOD explaining that the unassigned miles accumulated prior to that point were exempt miles. Drivers transporting agricultural commodities are not required to use an EOD if the vehicle was manufactured before the model year 2000, provided they prepare paper logs, or if they do not operate outside of the 150 air mile radius for more than 8 days during any 30-day period, provided they prepare paper logs on the days when they are not exempt from the hours of service rules. My truck is a 2020, so that don't apply to me, but if you had a year 2000 model, or before, you can run paper. You know, I think it's got to do with hooking it up. I'm not sure, so let me not even speak on that because I don't know what, that's the rules. So I'm gonna use my example. Raw milk. There's drivers that go to the farm and pick up the milk. They bring it back to our facility. They load it on the transports. So our facility is the source. I get 150 air miles around that circle. 172 driving miles. I don't have to log in that. When I hit the edge, I put truck, trailer, whatever, the shipping ID. Then I start logging from that point forward. So let's dig a little deeper on that. And I'm still on a Federal Motor Carrier Safety Association website. This is coming from them, so this ain't something I'm making up. I'm guessing. Let's see what they define as an agricultural commodity. This is 49 CFR 395.1. The agricultural commodity. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has provided regulatory guidance to clarify the applicability of the agricultural commodity exception in 49 CFR 395.1. That's the rule you would look up for the agricultural exemption. I'm gonna put that in the title. To the hours of service regulations. The regulatory guidance clarifies the exception regarding 1. Drivers operating unladen vehicles traveling either to pick up an agricultural commodity as defined in 395.2 or returning from a delivery point. So what that means for me is when I'm going outbound with a load, I got the 150 air miles. I'll start logging it, go deliver, and once I come back, if my next load, let me say the yard, my next load is coming out the yard. That's my source. So once I get back into that 150, even when I'm empty, I am eligible to go off duty and back into the agriculture exemption. So at that point, I'm off duty. I go get my load or whatever, or I go home, whatever. I live within 150 air miles of my terminal. I could go home, do whatever until I meet that point of, now, if say I'm picking up cream though, if I'm not picking up milk, we haul sweet cream and a lot of that stuff too, then I'm not eligible to log out. I have to stay logged in the whole way to the cream until the cream is finished, because that is a byproduct of milk, raw milk. The cream is the fat from the milk. It's been, in order to get the cream, they have to process the milk. That means that as technically, what word I want to use? That is defined as a finished product. It's been processed. It's not raw at that point no more. Sweet cream, soy milk, buttermilk, things like that. That's not, that has to be logged. So I wouldn't qualify. So that's why it's important to know what your next load is, to know if this is part of trip planning. If my next load is cream after the milk, I know, okay, hey, I got to go all the way from the source to point B is the delivery to my next load point A. I got to log all that. I got to make sure I got time for that. That's why I stress trip planning so much. Okay, that was number one. Number two, drivers engaged in trips beyond 150 air miles from the source of the agricultural commodity. Once you hit that edge, then you start logging, like we talked about. Determining the source of agricultural commodities, how the exception applies when agricultural commodities are loaded at multiple sources during a trip. I talked about that. You only get the first stop for your source as what is the start of the 150 to 172 driving miles is the first stop. You can have 8 stops. It don't matter. You only get the first stop. Agricultural commodity regulatory guidance primarily focuses on the application of the 150 air mile radius exemption. And so this is why it's important to know the rules and regulations if your company chooses to use it. So on an unladen vehicle, it applies to all round trips, all portions of a round trip within the 150 mile source radius of the source, regardless of whether the commercial motor vehicle is loaded or empty, or whether the destination is outside of the 150 air mile radius. So just because, oh, look at that sunshine. So just because you're outside of the 150 air mile, you know your load goes beyond that 150. That don't mean you got to start logging from the source with a raw commodity. I'm gonna keep stressing that. Raw commodity for me is milk. Raw milk. It ain't been touched, it ain't been processed other than being loaded at the farm. So even if I know it goes beyond the 150, I don't mean I have to log it from the source or the yard. I still get the 150. So it says, yes, provided that the trip does not involve transporting any non-agricultural cargo. Like we said, it can't be cream, it can't be, sweet cream or soy milk. That don't qualify. It's a touched product. It says agricultural commodity exception is available to a driver transporting agricultural commodities for a distance up to 150 air miles from the source, regardless of the distance between the source and final destination. It says, does the agricultural commodity exception apply if the destination for the commodity is beyond the 150 air mile radius from the source? Yes, the exception applies. So this is good to know. Like I said, I'm gonna link this. Multiple pickups are permissible, but the 150 air mile radius continues to be measured from the first pickup point, regardless of the number of times commodities are loaded or offloaded. That's what I'm telling you. It's nothing to have. Some of these routes have, 10, 20 stops. That's nothing. That's why I'm telling you, you got to use it from the first stop. That's your source. Your source is the first stop. So for me, like I said, I look at it and I say, okay, I'm getting ready to haul some raw milk. Cool. From wherever. I may get it out on the road somewhere. I may get it from New York. but I'm gonna use the yard because that's 95% of the loads. Okay, cool. My next 2 loads are milk. So I know, boom, I got this. I know where to log in at. And so, okay, I say, hey, I'm picking up here. I know when I get to here, at this point, I gotta start logging. I go activate my log. I go on duty, do my pre-trip or whatever, and I say, okay, I go in and annotate that. It'll bring up a screen, unidentified driving time. I go in, make a remark for that period. Agriculture exemption, you know, I save it, and then I continue, you know, to do my thing. Put my trailer, truck, your shipping ID, you know, your shipper and what you're hauling in. You know, PO, bill lading, whatever you want to put in there. They'll get you for that for not doing that. That's form and manner, man. They'll ding you for that. And so then I continue on, you know, do my delivery, and then come back and say, okay, cool. I got another load of milk. So when I get back to the edge of that 150, which is 172 air miles, boom, I go back off duty. So within that 150, I'm good to go. I don't have to log anything. You get fuel or anything, you don't have to log that. You're exempt from everything within that 150 air mile exemption bubble. Let's call it a bubble. You're exempt from everything. You don't have to log nothing in there. Cool. Go get my next load, same thing. Now, if that third load, I say, okay, I'm delivering this, but I gotta go back in Ohio and pick up cream. I'm not eligible for the 150. I go pick the cream up. That means I gotta stay logged in from the point of the cream until I make it to the delivery back to the 150. Even if the delivery is within the 150 air mile bubble from my 4th load, which would be milk, I would still have to log it up until it's delivered, and then I could go off duty, and then I would be fine. But say the cream goes outside of the 150. I will log it all the way to the delivery and then back to the edge of the 150 for my 4th milk load, raw milk. It may seem tricky and stuff like that. That's why I said I'm going to link the Federal Motor Carriers website so you guys can go look at it. Get the book or go on the website. It's going to be your friend out here to look up rules and regulations, because every officer has his own explanation of what the law means to him. And it's at their discretion, but to be able to pull it up, and it helps to know what you're talking about. If you can explain it to them, it will help prove your case, because man, it's all on how they're interpreting the law, and sometimes they're wrong, they're human. So it may seem like I'm throwing a lot at you, but that is how the 150 air mile exemption is used. If the company you work for decides to use it, they may not. And you know what? That's their discretion. They don't have to use it. It's there to be used. My company uses it, so I wanted to explain it on how we use it and how it's correctly used. Think about that, guys. So that's today's video. As always, make it to your pickup and delivery on time and safely. Call your loved ones, tell them you love them. Love on somebody today, but most importantly, be the reason somebody smiles today. The world needs it now more than ever. Enjoy this beautiful sunshine, this great weather we got coming. It's Trucking with Shamel, and I'm out. Peace.